Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, of course. And welcome to this No Time to Die spoiler discussion. Now, I know many of you haven't seen the movie. Now, what I normally do is, because I don't always get the chance to see brand new, hotly anticipated movies in the cinema straight away, because I look after my disabled father, because I write, direct and star in my own plays, so I'm very, very busy. I always dive into people's spoilers discussions. I don't mind being spoiled. Now, if you do, go away after 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, this won't be an expansive spoiler discussion, but I will spoil a couple of things, a couple of huge things, because not only do I want to analyze them, but I want to also take that spoiler discussion and talk about the future of the Bond franchise. For me, Daniel Craig's James Bond, from the moment we knew it was being rebooted, was an offshoot, Elseworld James Bond. He was never the James Bond we grew up with. Yes, he's the most accurately depicted Bond from Ian Fleming's imagination, and that's great. But I repeat, he's not the James Bond we grew up with. Daniel Craig insisted on the reboot. He got it. Daniel Craig got rid of Danny Boyle as a director. For me, was an absolutely big mistake. He insisted on a female 007. He insisted on Phoebe Waller-Bridge coming in to rewrite the movie. The whole narrative about bringing James Bond into the Me Too era was all down to him. And the best thing that could have happened to the franchise is Daniel Craig leaving it. Now, I know that's a very controversial thing to say, but I mean it with every essence of my being. I've been watching James Bond since I was a small boy. Nothing wrong with it. It's fantasy. It's escapism. Now, I think Daniel Craig is a great actor. I think Casino Royale is his greatest Bond film. It's sensational. But because Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli listened too much to him, there were problems. There were serious inconsistencies. It's interesting to me when we go back to Pierce Brosnan, right? They gave him a phone call after Die Another Day and said, we're going to go in a different direction. They went in a different direction because they fucked up his era of Bond. You know, GoldenEye was sensational, but it got worse and worse and worse as Brosnan's era continued. That wasn't Pierce Brosnan's fault. It was their fault. So because of them, he couldn't continue being Bond. He could have been Bond for another 5 movies, another 3 movies at least. It was a shame. They decided to reboot it. But after I saw Casino Royale, I loved it. And I thought, okay, a reboot. They went down the Jack Bauer 24 route, the Bourne, the Jason Bourne route. They tried to modernize the franchise. But what was somewhat disappointing was leaving the original continuity behind, because it wasn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There wasn't references, there wasn't Easter eggs mostly, and there wasn't many cameos. Each film was self-contained, but at least you knew every new actor was playing the same Bond. Daniel Craig wasn't. So let's get into this spoiler discussion. One of the things that was blatantly obvious to me during all the marketing and trailers, and I don't know if it was obvious to you, was the heavy hints of James Bond's death in No Time to Die. Surprise, surprise, he dies at the end of No Time to Die. Or so we think, because it's in an explosion. We don't know if he actually dies. Now, what's interesting about this is normally when you finish an era of James Bond or any franchise, or that chapter of the era, they need to get you hyped up for the future. By killing Daniel Craig's James Bond, what's the future? Another spoiler, which you probably already know, he has a daughter in this movie. So, before we jump and discuss the future of this franchise, Felix Leiter also dies early on in this movie. So it seems to me they've sewn up all the seeds of this Craig era and they're leaving it behind. Could it be that going forward, they could just, reboot the franchise every time an actor leaves? I don't like that. I think it's shit because there's no continuity. You can't look back at the history and say, oh, that era was great, that era wasn't so great. It's not the same Bond anymore. I suspect they may do that. What they also might do is go back to the original continuity of James Bond. Now, I would really like it. I would like them to do this, but what scares me, they're not going to do that. They're going to do what I've already predicted just a moment ago, where they're just going to reboot the franchise every time an actor leaves. And as I say, it's not what I want. Now, if they were to remain in the Daniel Craig era of James Bond, it's obvious what they may try, and it's every James Bond fan's worst nightmare. He was in the explosion, he didn't die, he's had plastic surgery, and that's why he looks different. That worries me. But when Bond's lover talks to her daughter and tells her about Bond, let me tell you about a man. He was a hero. His name was Bond, James Bond. I don't like that. I really don't like that. This film has serious issues. It really does. I don't believe for a second that Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli believed anything that they were saying during the marketing, and I'm talking about the woke narrative. I don't like that word woke, but I'm using it so you understand what I'm referring to. Everything they were saying they didn't mean, because they've been producing Bond for a very long time, and they've done things that weren't very woke. You can't suddenly say we're making Bond for the Me Too era all of a sudden in a final movie of that current actor's Bond era. It makes no sense, because Bond's been attempting to clean itself up really since the Timothy Dalton era. There was very few Bond girls, just two, a villainess kind of thing, and the one he falls in love with and shares the adventure with. They were normally strong women, and it's been that way for a very long time. Women have been represented quite well in James Bond since the Timothy Dalton era. So this is all from Daniel Craig, and what's great now, we can get back without Craig making great James Bond, and I definitely want to see that. Going back to the film, no, I don't want to see James Bond die in a movie, but we don't know if he's dead. So they could continue it like that, talking about the plastic surgery thing. I hope they don't. They could also create an offshoot with Bond's daughter several years in the future. That could be a spin-off. But Barbara Broccoli's already said when she was asked about Amazon and, James Bond offshoot streaming shows, she said, no, I don't believe Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli are fit for purpose anymore. They haven't even looked into casting the new James Bond yet. We live in the era of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DCEU, the Fast and the Furious. There's no organisation. Yeah, we'll start looking into casting a Bond next year. We're in 2021. Next year will be 2022. This is the 21st century. You can't take your time and take 3 or 5 years making another Bond film. Now, it's pretty obvious to all of us that Bond is still relevant, it still makes money, and people are still excited for it. We're looking at a 90 million domestic international, let me say it again, a 90 million international box office weekend without America. It's not released in America till the 8th of October, just over a week's time. So it's going to make good money. The question is, how big will the drop-off be? And very soon, Venom Let There Be Carnage will be released. That's going to be a big competitor. Which one will audiences choose? No Time to Die. It is funny when it is called No Time to Die and James Bond dies. Interesting title. First of all, the marketing in the heavy hints of Bond's death were absolutely so stupid and so transparent. They made it obvious that, in fact, he is going to die if he's in fact dead. What I'd like to hear from you in the comments down below is, what do you think? Do you think that James Bond is dead? How would you like them to continue? And who would you like to be the new James Bond? It's going to be very interesting if they go for an unknown or someone established like Tom Hardy or Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill would be a more old-fashioned type of Bond, I think, although he's quite well built and quite robust. But it doesn't mean he can't be a gentleman. And you know, this James Bond, Daniel Craig, for me, wasn't really much of a gentleman. So there's that, the casting and where they will go with the casting. But the question remains, will they reboot it again? Will they go back to the original continuity? Or who knows? Who knows what they're going to... Are they going to continue this era of James Bond? I don't think there's any way they can continue this Daniel Craig era of James Bond. But the last thing I want to see is it being rebooted after each time. Just like GoldenEye, Casino Royale was a great movie, and it got worse and worse and worse. We had two great movies, right? Skyfall and Casino Royale. Two of the best Bond movies you will ever see. I'm not going to call them the best, because I think every Bond film is valid to different people. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to invalidate what you love, and that's not what this channel's here for. But two Bond films. So we had Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre, No Time to Die. We had 5 films, right? Casino Royale is awesome. Quantum of Solace was an attempt to create a connective, continued universe. They messed it up, so that's a bad film. So, and then you get Skyfall, that's a great film. Then you get Spectre, which is not a great film. And No Time to Die, it's divisive. It's heavily divisive. And I think that's one thing I will say if you haven't seen the film. So, 2 good movies out of 5, right? Pretty much with the Pierce Brosnan era, 1 good movie, basically, in GoldenEye. That was the one that set the standard, and that standard was not met in the other movies, and Pierce Brosnan had to pay with losing his position as James Bond. And that's wrong, because it wasn't even his fault. Now, Daniel Craig made a very strong statement after Spectre and said he'd rather blah, blah, blah than be in another Bond film again, but he came back for the big payday, made sure he would be running things. So I don't want Tom Hardy being the next Bond. I think he would be a great Bond, but like Craig, he's very opinionated on how these franchises should be. He has got a lot of authority and creative decision making over with the Venom franchise, and that hasn't really worked out too well creatively yet. The first one made money. I'm sure the second one will make money as well. Having actors so in control of the creative process really worries me, and I've just explained to you all the decisions he insisted on making in his era of James Bond. I'm talking in terms of Daniel Craig. I don't want another actor to do that. I want someone to come in to do their job and play a great James Bond. So what do I think is going to happen in the future of James Bond? I think they're going to reboot it. I think the Craig era is dead, because the only way you can bring him back is by saying he survived the explosion and had plastic surgery. No Bond fan is going to like that. Now, the guy who plays Q says that they need to take a long, hard look at making James Bond relevant again. That sounds like an actor who doesn't really approve of what they've been doing. It just says something to me. So this is the second era of James Bond in a row where they've made a bit of a mess of it. After one decent movie at the beginning and another one, in Skyfall, a great movie, but which is pretty much a rip-off of The Dark Knight. James Bond needs to be James Bond. He doesn't have to treat anyone better because he's James Bond. That's the end of it. We just want to have an adventure with James Bond, and we don't care about the extreme left politics. We're not interested. These films make money whether you clean them out morally or not. So there's no need for it. But we are where we are in the industries. Yes, so I think it's another reboot. I would like them to go back to the original continuity, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. And when you do go and see Bond, come back, fill up the comments and let me know what you thought of No Time to Die. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. I will be back with more videos later on. Until then, comment down below, like, share and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss anything and never miss this perfection. And I will see you again soon.